Mack Brown returns to college football as the all-time active winningest football coach. In between these two stints, won a national championship as the head coach at the University of Texas. Of course, worked with us here at ESPN. He returns to take the reins of a program that is in dire need of rehabilitation. I mean, when it comes to the talent pool and the wins, certainly a significant drop-off over the last couple of years. David, what do you make of this move, and how quickly can they get it turned around?
I think they can be quicker than people think. Now, one of the weird numbers of last year, they were in close games. They had, I think, 65% of their drives were in games they were either ahead or within a touchdown. So they're not as far off as people think. If Sam Howell becomes the quarterback that I think Mack Brown believes he can be, that's a team that can compete for a bowl game certainly this year.
Talking to ACC coaches, most of them will tell you, especially in the Coastal Division, there is talent on that North Carolina roster. They were just decimated by injuries the last two seasons. So a lot of those coaches don't think that North Carolina is going to be as bad as they have been the last couple of years, not just because of the talent level, but they also believe this is a very strong staff that Mack Brown has assembled.
You know they're going to recruit.
They will. And Mack Brown, guys, even though he's an older coach, he's an exceptional communicator. We saw that working with him at ESPN. You see the way he talks to players. I think that's an important thing. A guy in his mid-60s, been out of the game. Why should we pay attention to him? He's going to connect with those guys in those rooms and also the family rooms as well on the recruiting trail. And to Andrew's point, great staff put together. I loved Jay Bateman, especially the defensive coordinator he brought in.
Real quick, Andrea, is this a long-term solution for North Carolina in your eyes?
Oh, if they continue to recruit the way they have right out of the gate, absolutely. I don't know that Mack Brown's going to be there for 10 or 15 years. But if he can set that foundation and hand it off.
Pass the baton.
Absolutely. Hand it off to somebody who can keep it running, so to speak. We've all talked about North Carolina being a sleeping giant in the Coastal Division, the ACC, because of the facilities, where they are, the school, and the recruiting. Now that we're seeing them recruit at a potential top 10, top 15 level, I think that, yes, this could be something where Mack Brown gets it going and someone else can pick it up.
Well, all of us here are in agreement as we transition down to South Florida that the Miami Hurricanes are the team that's primed to take that next step and be the true competitor to the Clemson Tigers. So, Adam, let's start with you. How quickly can he get this thing going in the right direction? There's a lot of momentum, a lot of positive buzz surrounding this program right now.
Yeah, another coach who has created that buzz on the recruiting trail, understands the program. He knows the personnel. He was defensive coordinator last year, so that transition shouldn't be nearly as dramatic as it is for a Jeff Collins or a Scott Satterfield. And I think as they build up the quarterback position, I like the Dan Enos hire, bringing him in as offensive coordinator. You've seen what he's done in the past with quarterbacks. That's if they get that position right, I think they're going to have the other places on the roster relatively set. Offensive line is another area, but I just love the fit. It's such a great fit for Miami, which hasn't had that necessarily, and that's why they haven't necessarily reached their potential as a program.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about it ad nauseum. It's quarterback, right?
So if a quarterback pays out, they're going to be pretty good.
The defense was one of the better units in the country last year overall, but if you don't have good quarterback play, if you can't get the ball out, if you can't use your playmakers the way, and they have playmakers, skill guys, then it's hard to win. So the quarterback is the answer this year.
Well, Coastal Division coaches will tell you this is the most talented team in that division, and they love what Manny Diaz has done with that defense. They'll all tell you that is the most difficult defense that they're going to face this season. It's obviously about the offense, but it's something Adam mentioned earlier. It's the culture. And Manny Diaz told me in the spring, I have had to work really, really hard to get everybody united and together on this team because the defense was on one side, the offense was on another side last season. There were breakdowns in the locker room. Players didn't get along. And so trying to build that culture has been a huge point of emphasis for him this offseason. And one other thing, you look at their ACC schedule, it sets up very nicely for Miami this season to make a run.
Yeah, listen, the building blocks are there. There's no question. I love the quarterback move with Jaron Williams. Now, maybe a more significant overhaul and much more challenging takeover is the one that Scott Satterfield is embarking on as the new head man in Louisville after what was an extremely successful tenure at his alma mater as they transitioned from the FCS to the FBS level of play in the Sun Belt Conference. This is a whole different type of undertaking, but also one that you just kind of feel like, was this guy the perfect person at the perfect time to lead Louisville?
One of the most interesting things that Scott Satterfield told me when I talked to him is that he's trying to model this program after Clemson. And so we've heard, oh, who are the Nick Saban clones? Who are the Nick Saban clones? Well, now we're starting to see coaches looking at the Clemson model.
Who's the Dabo clone?
Maybe it's Scott Satterfield. He spent springs when he was at App State visiting with Clemson and paying attention to what they were doing. And so when you're looking at a program that was so beaten down by the previous coaching staff.
Right.
And you have a coach now who's talking about love and community
Embracing.
and playing for each other. There is no bigger 180 anywhere in the country than going from Bobby Petrino to what Scott Satterfield is doing at Louisville. And not only that, Atlantic Division coaches believe this is going to be a much better team this year because of the system that he runs and because of the coaching staff that they have. And they believe long-term, Louisville's a team they have to pay attention to.
And look, we talk culture. That's what we've talked about with each of these coaches. It probably more so at Louisville than anywhere. And Scott Satterfield told me that when he got there, he'd never seen a quarterback whose confidence was as low as Jawan Pass's was when he arrived there. You know, I talked to Jawan Pass recently, and he said, look, we didn't go to coaches' houses. We're going over to grill at Scott Satterfield's house now. They were just all beaten down. I think the entire level of confidence, the entire ability to kind of take that deep breath and say, hey, we're learning here. Right? It's not life or death every play. I think that is a big change at Louisville, and it's something that was desperately needed.
Given how quickly things fell apart under Petrino, I mean, we all remember where they were against Clemson in 2016 and then where they were at the end of last year. Again, to David's point, this year is about changing that atmosphere around the program, developing players, giving everybody a sense of where we're headed, not necessarily the results on the field. But coaches have tremendous respect for what Scott Satterfield did at Appalachian State, and to Andrea's point, built a really good staff now at Louisville. Brian Brown, really good young defensive coordinator, and Court Dennison, who had been on Bobby Petrino's staff, bringing him in from Oregon. Very smart move to help that transition also with recruiting.
We're so glad you're watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, make sure you subscribe to ESPN+. We'll see you there.